Good morning, folks, and welcome to the final live stream of CIS 099. All we have to do is cover chapter 14, and you'll finish that chapter, and then all you have left is the final exam, which will be posted by this Friday, if not sooner. All right, so chapter 14 introduces some JavaScript code. What is JavaScript used for? Some very basic ways to use it, and it's kind of an introduction to the basics of JavaScript. What it is not is you're not going to master JavaScript from this, but if you're interested, there are many tools that can help you learn it. I just want to show you why you should care about it and be interested in it. If you want to be able to create a website, a modern website, or a web app, or you can also create tools that you can use yourself. So when you create a new HTML REPL, which you've done numerous times in this course, it gives you three files. The HTML file that we've used since chapter 2, the CSS file that we've used since chapter 3, and now we can use the script file now that we're at the end of the course. So right down here, this tag that you've either ignored or removed from your assignments is how you include, well, it's one way you can include JavaScript in your web page. And so you should leave it at the bottom of the page. So we can put a little message here. It says, don't put anything below this line. Because the script tag is not going to add anything to the page that will appear on the page, it will just, when it hits this point, it'll look for this script.js file and run the code inside of that file. All right, so it's a lot like the link element for CSS. When the browser is interpreting your code, once it hits that link element, it'll check the style.css for your CSS code. Okay, so CSS is for formatting and changing properties of different elements. This .js file is for including JavaScript on your page. All right. So here is some background information about JavaScript. It says it's an object-based scripting language. And in this class, we're focusing on applying JavaScript to a web page within a browser. Okay, and so within the browser, it has access to manipulating the browser window, the document, and this represents everything included in the HTML file, which encompasses all of the elements. Remember from chapter 2, HTML has elements, attributes, and tags. We can use JavaScript to change our attributes. We can use it to create new elements on the page dynamically. You can do a lot of stuff with it. All right. What you can't do is manipulate files outside of the browser or files on the person's computer. It's limited to within the browser unless a user gives it permission. Alright, so we're going to take a look at a few simple things you can do with JavaScript. That way you'll be ready for the exercises. Okay, we're going to look at specifically the different ways to include JavaScript, and you can place it directly in your HTML page. You can place it directly in an element, or you can place it in a separate file. So here we have an example of including it directly in the web page. Okay, so we'll go ahead and copy this code. And we have to be careful when we're copying out of a PowerPoint because sometimes it doesn't always work. And you want to put your script tags at the end here. All right. So here we have a simple command in JavaScript. It's the alert command, which tells the browser to open a tiny window with a message. So in this case, it says when someone visits this page, you will alert them, create a little box that says, "Welcome to our site." Okay, so we can see that if we run the page. Okay, it says, "Welcome to our site." All right, it's going to work differently in different browsers. So for this chapter and these exercises, I'll primarily be using Chrome, Google Chrome, and so when you're testing your code, you're going to want to test it in Chrome because that's what I'm going to use to grade it. So I know all of this will work in Chrome. If you use Firefox or Edge or Safari, you'll have to download Google Chrome to test it in there. If you don't want to have to download that, you can also use the school VMs. If you need help with setting that up, just let me know. It's a very simple process. You just look up Google Chrome. And then you go to the site. You hit the button, download Chrome. Save it to your downloads. And then you just have to run the file you downloaded. And you just keep hitting yes to everything. Let's see if they added any extra software here that we want to avoid. Alright, I think that's actually as simple as it is. Alright. Alright. So here you can, if you want to change the message, here you just type whatever you want here. This is a message. And you can see that will pop up. Alright, whenever anyone visits a site, it'll do that. So you don't want to, this isn't a very good thing to include on a site, but it's a good way to practice using JavaScript. Because nobody wants to be stopped and have to click on a box to continue onto the site. Okay, so You can try it, but I don't recommend using it in a website. Okay. So that alert function manipulates the browser window. We can also manipulate the elements on a web page. And so what we're looking at here in this picture is a hierarchy of what objects JavaScript has access to in the browser. Okay, so we can access the browser window, we can change the properties of that, we can manipulate the history, the location, which is what web page or address you're currently at. All right. But what's important for us is this document. Okay, so within the window, when we load a page, that page is represented in JavaScript by a document object. And within that document, we have access to all the elements on a page. Okay, so this is a little bit like CSS. So we can refer to objects by name, kind of like we can use selectors to select certain elements. And we can manipulate their properties. So here they are changing the BG color property of the document, which is kind of an outdated way to do anything, but let's see what happens. So we tell it which property we want to change. So the way you interpret this is in our web page document, look at the property BG color, and then let's try setting it to red. And you end your lines in JavaScript with a semicolon. Alright, that didn't seem to do anything, so I wonder, some of the stuff in this book is outdated. Let's try this. Let's try alert document.bg color. And so what this is going to do is it's going to figure out what the background color of the page is and then spit it out in an alert box. Okay, so our first one says this is a message. That'll happen first. And then here it says document.bg color is undefined. Okay. And so let's try changing it again. Here's the first message. And then here it's telling us what the value of document.bg color is, red. It doesn't seem to be changing anything. I wonder if I need to put some elements on the page so that something will actually show up. Alright, let's see if that even exists anymore, because this stuff obviously this stuff changes. Document.bg color. So right here it says the deprecated BG color property sets the background color of the current document. So this word right here is very important to understand. Deprecated. That means people have abandoned using it. So you should not use that. So we'll just kill that off of the slides. And this affects a property that is also deprecated, BG color, which is an attribute of an element, that's not how we change colors anymore. We actually do it with CSS. So let's take a look at the new way to do it. And I wonder if they include it here. Alright, so using JavaScript to change background color. This will give us the syntax for manipulating the CSS. So here we go, here's some code. Right, here's what we're looking for. You choose your element, and then inside of that you have a style object that contains all the properties. And so here it has one called background color, and you can set it to the value that you want the background color to be. So let's try this. Let's try it first and then we'll add it to the PowerPoint. Got to keep this stuff up to date. So that I'm not teaching you useless information. Alright, so let's try accessing the document directly and changing its style, background color to red. And we'll get rid of this. Hello? Telemarketers. All right. Cannot set property of undefined. Okay, so we probably have to access it separately. Let's try in the document, changing the body element style to red, background color red. There we go. So this is the proper way to do it. And I know this probably looks daunting, but if you break it down into what it's doing, it's much easier to understand. So remember that hierarchy we were looking at here? We accessed the document object of the window object. And you may ask, well, you didn't put window here. Well, window, the window object is also known as the global object, which means JavaScript will just assume everything's coming from here, so you don't have to include it to reference it, but this is a more accurate representation of what's going on. So this is saying inside of the window object there is a document object. Inside of that there is a body object which represents the body element. Inside of that there is a style object, and within that style object there is a background color property. And once we have this is referring to one thing. This is how you specifically access the background color property of style for the body on the document inside the browser window. Okay? So you don't have to include window, so if you don't want it to be that long, you can do it like this. All right. If you don't, and so here we can change some different properties to also see if we can access the paragraphs directly from here. Though I think that is organized in a different way. Okay. And so one thing that's cool about JavaScript that's different from CSS is that down here in the console, if there is an error, it is going to tell you where it is. So the way you interpret this is on line 21, it cannot read the property style of undefined. So using JavaScript, it's important to understand these error codes. So let's interpret this, because they're not always straightforward. Alright, so it can't find a style property of undefined. So we look at where style is. So that means it can't find style within this, which probably means this doesn't exist. And so we can look at in our hierarchy. Okay, we have anchor, form, image, link. There should be other ones. And this is called, from this point down, from document down, that's called the document object model. So if you want more specifics, you can just look up document object model. Okay. Now we can see a more specific way to access things. Here we go. So since the paragraph is within the body, we have to include that in here. So we can do document.body.p.style background color. Let's try setting that to blue. Alright, so we can't access it that way either. I think since there can be multiple paragraph elements, that it stores it in a way where we have to specify which one. So if we want the first one, let's see if this works. Nope. Alright. I believe we can select it this way though. Nope. Alright. What we can do is, let's just look at what objects are inside the body element. And if you have an error in your code like this, what happens is you will encounter, as soon as you encounter an error, it's going to stop reading the JavaScript. So let's take that out for now. And let's alert. Let's get rid of this first alert. So you can put 2 slashes to turn off a line of code. And you can also use this to put little messages in. Hello, this is a comment. Alright, so instead of deleting that line of code, because we want to figure out how to fix it to do what we want, I don't want to have to retype all that, right? So I will comment it out. And you can see, I'll make this a little tinier. So you can see that this is just one line. And I don't want this alert to happen anymore right now. What I want to alert is the body object. Let's see what that spits out. So it says object HTML body element. So this tells us what it is. It's an object, and this is the type that it is. It's an HTML body element. Okay. That didn't help us with what we need because it didn't tell us what's in it, so we're going to have to go in and look at that. One cool thing about JavaScript is it's all processed on your computer, so you can find the code and you can check what values anything is within the console. So we can go to open the developer tools with F12. Okay. And we want to look at, let's try sources. Okay. And our code is within the index file. And so somewhere we have a list of all the information is in here. No, it's in here somewhere. There's a lot of stuff in here. Okay. We want to see what's in here. Let's right click on it and do reveal in sidebar. I don't see it there. We may have to move this to the JavaScript. Or let's see if this works. Okay. So what I did was I clicked on a line here, and what that does is it will stop everything on the page, pause it when it gets to this line. And so after it changes this to red and prints out this object in the alert, before the script ends, it's going to freeze everything. And so that gives us a snapshot of what this page has access to. And we want to check the variables under this scope. We have this variable here. Let's see if I can make this bigger. Yeah, there we go. So I'm hitting Control plus to make this bigger. All right. And we want to check the global window object. Remember, that's at the top of, that's the highest object that JavaScript has access to. So inside of that, we have all of this stuff. Okay, but what we care about is the document object. So we can click that and see what's inside of there. We have all of this stuff, but we want to see what's in the body. All right. So let's go down. All these ones that are null, they're not being used. Here within child nodes, it shows us what objects are on the page. Here within children, it also shows what elements there are here. The first element on the page is the P element. You can see there's a lot of stuff not being used in here. So all of this stuff is used by the browser to build the page. Here we can actually see when the page was last modified too. So there's a lot of metadata in here. That'd be interesting if it showed. So I don't know if you guys are aware, whenever you take a picture with your phone, if you have location enabled on your phone, when you take a picture, it's going to include when the picture was taken, where the picture was taken, the device that took the picture. All of that is stored as metadata. So here's the metadata for the page, specifically the body element. All right, So I think we want to go back. Let's use the children. All right, so within the children object, the first element is our P. So that means to access that, we're going to have to do document.body.children 0. And so lists in most programming language, I don't think I've seen in programming language where lists start with 1. They always start with 0. So this references that paragraph tag because it's the first thing in the body, and then we'll try changing its background color to blue. There, now we have it. Okay, so JavaScript probably isn't the best way to change the colors on a page, but you can do it. And since it's logic that's running, we could use JavaScript to determine the color based on what the user does. Alright, so let's try this. Just show you something cool here. I'm going to also post this in the chat before I forget, for those of you who want to mess around with the code, all in one place. Okay, so there is a, let's see if this will work. Let me look up the syntax. Since we're using the JavaScript language, it's a good idea to start with that in your search. And I know there is a random, let's see if there's this, math.random in JavaScript. Okay. We can look at an example. Here we go. We want get random int. No, we want this. Well, we can create it as a function. That'll make it easier. And you could write this from scratch, but it's much easier to find what you need and just include it in your page. And for small things like this, it's like, you know, you can't copyright a chair, a surface with 4 legs that people can sit on. You can't copyright that. And so using something small like this, it's like using a screwdriver. You know, you don't have to get permission to use a screwdriver. Okay. If it's something big and complicated, then things get cloudier. Alright, so we can specify some random numbers. So let's do, we remember how to calculate colors in HTML or in CSS. We need red, green, and blue. So we can do create a box to hold the amount of red, green, and blue. So we can say let red equal get random int. Remember, it goes up to 255. Okay, it's from chapter 3. And we can do that for the other colors. Copy and paste is your friend. Well, you guys know that from CSS and HTML. It's always good to practice your typing, though. All right. So now we're generating a random number of red, green, and blue. And let's see if we can use this function to generate a color. So we have red, green, and blue. Probably isn't a function. Yeah. So let's look up JavaScript function for color. All right. So it is just the color function. So instead of RGB, which I think there's something similar like this in CSS, but in JavaScript it says we can use color. See if it works. Nope, it said color is not defined. Here we go. Here they're converting it to hexadecimal. There may not be a simple way to do this. Here we have HSLA. Which is hue, saturation, and some other stuff. The A is alpha for transparency, I'm assuming. When you start looking up code, you're going to encounter this website, Stack Overflow. I can't remember if I've mentioned how to use this in this class. But when you click on one, what you do is you look at the first part. This is a problem someone is having. So usually the code they're providing does not work. So you have to skip over that. But you look at it to determine if the problem you're having is similar to their problem. Sometimes I just assume that it might be, and then you look for the top answer. If it has a green check mark, that means the person with this problem, whatever is in here was the solution to their problem. This number here represents how many people agreed with that. And so as you go down, you'll notice only 293 people liked this solution. 1,085 people thought this was the best solution. So, letters. I think this returns hexadecimal. So anyway, I don't think there's a simple way to do this, so we'll just steal this. We'll borrow it. And again, this is a simple function, so it's not like you're stealing someone's original work, because this would be simple to do. Okay, so it looks like we can just type get random color. So let's put get random color. And the document.body.children.style.background color equals get random color at line 20. Oh, I probably forgot something here. This code's a bit old, so let's try this. And they put this all on one line, so let's fix that. Make it easier to read. Oh, and then this part was randomly on its own line when it didn't need to be. Right. And I'm just fixing the indentation here to make it easier for me to read. There we go. Alright, should work now. Or not. So now it says line 24 has an error. Oh, there's a random space here. Get rid of that. There we go. So now every time you visit the page, the color is going to be different, randomly generated. You can do the same thing for the body color. And when you're writing this code, you generally want to specify your, they're called variables, your containers for holding values at the top. After that, you want to specify your functions. And then after that, you actually put the code that's going to run. So now we have a function that will give us a random color in hexadecimal whenever we call this function. Right? And just for fun, let's see what the output of that looks like. So we'll do alert, get random color. So here's a random color, and then it'll pick two more random colors. So here we have purple and green, so we got a Hulk theme going on here. So we couldn't do this with HTML and CSS. Here we have code that's doing something and then applying it to the page. All right. Don't worry, the exercises that you're going to be doing are much simpler than this. Okay, so let's skip ahead a bit to the important parts. So we looked at how to include the code right on the page. I usually don't like to do that because it makes the file larger and much more difficult to read. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And what we can do, I just copied all that code. We just throw it in the script.js file. It'll still work. And if we ever need to change the JavaScript, we know we can go directly to the file instead of having to scroll up and down in the page trying to find it. And all we need is this line here. Opening script tag with an attribute that tells it where the file is and a closing script tag. And you can include multiple examples of this. So let's call the one we have color change.js. And then we'll keep script.js as a separate file. So do they have a duplicate? Okay. So let's create a new file called script. Well, we gotta make the other file first, which is, what did I call it? colorchange.js. Okay, and then we can move this code out of script.js, put it in colorchange.js, and now if we want to mess with the color change stuff, we know it's in that file, and if we want to do other things, we can put it in the script file as long as we have these tags here. And remember, you want to put those at the end of the body. Alright, so we looked at how to add the JavaScript right in the page. We looked at how to add it in a separate file and include that on the page. There's another way you can use JavaScript, and that is by applying events to elements. So for this class, we're going to do it the easy way. I know you like that, right? And so our events are here, and then we can use these event handlers as attributes in our elements to give them some sort of interactive feature. All right, so we have, let's try on click. So we can go to any element and add in the on click attribute, and the value you're going to put in there is just JavaScript code. So you can also, another place you can include your script tags when you're just including a file like this is in your head section, just like your CSS. I'm going to move those up here. Okay, because I'm going to be using the getRandomColor function from colorChange.js, I have to make sure that this line is before anywhere where I use that. So I can use the function from inside there by putting getRandomColor. Oops. So I can put the JavaScript code right in here. And let's do this .style .background color. And so as you're looking at this, you'll notice there is a standard for naming things in JavaScript. It'll work if you don't follow this, but it helps people identify what's going on in the code. So if you're naming a function, in this case, you would start the first word with lowercase, and then every word after that you put uppercase. And the reason they do this is you can't have spaces in your names because the computer uses spaces to separate the different parts of the code. And so using a capital letter for the remainder of the words allows you to read it much easier. getRandomColor, if it was all lowercase, it would be easy. It would be difficult to read what that is. With that word, that it's 3 words. All right, so let's see if this works. So if we click on the paragraph, it's supposed to change the background color. All right, cannot read property, children of Noel. On line 17 in colorChange.js. All right. Okay, because we moved the code above the body, so this is what it's telling you. Up here, you're trying to change the body and the paragraph background colors to random colors, but the browser hasn't loaded those, so it doesn't know what you're talking about. So let's try moving these back below the body. But then we might have another problem. Nope, now we have it. Okay, but we might have a problem when we click on this. But I don't think we will. So we click on this. Okay, it says this.style.backgroundColor.getRandomColor is not a function. GetRandomColor. So we have that function here. So now why it's mad is it's going to run this code, but it doesn't know what the getRandomColor function is. So we have a small problem here. We need the function getRandomColor to be above this JavaScript so it knows what to do, but we need it below these elements so that it can change them. So we can simply do this, we can use the colorchange.js file to contain all of our function definitions. Okay, and then this code can only run after the page is loaded, so we can put that in script.js. So now the page will load, it'll create those functions, and then after the page is loaded, it will change them. So let's see if that works. Okay, and now if we click on it, let's see if that works. Nope. All right. So it can't find that function. So I think what we have to do is we're going to have to create a function here to contain that code. Because what happens is here when it loads colorchange.js, and then it loads the rest of the page, as soon as the page is done loading, all of that stuff stops existing. So make sure I'm not making any mistakes here. On click, and then run this code. Let's try this. Nope. Okay. That's just going to return the value of the function. Okay, so oh, my bad. That was the incorrect JavaScript code. But everything should work now. Okay, so now it should be able to access that function. So every time we click this, it'll change the color. And so that's the on-click event. Let's try some of the other events. Okay, so we can do on load just runs the function once when the page loads. That one's kind of boring. On mouse over and mouse out. Let's try those. On mouse over. On mouse out. And those are the ones that'll work with this. All right. So let's try that out. So let's try the on mouse over one. So it changes every time your cursor will hover over the element. And then what about on mouse out? We can put our cursor on the element, but not until we leave will it change. So you can see here. Every time we trigger that event, we are running this JavaScript code. All right. Here they're talking about using Firefox. Most of this code should work in Firefox, but like we talked about before, browsers do act differently. So there's no guarantee that it'll work in every browser. There are ways to account for that, but I don't want you to have to worry about that in this class. So like I said before, if it works in Chrome, then you're going to get the points. If it works in Firefox, if you only test it in Firefox, you won't know if it works in Chrome. So you have to test it in Chrome to make sure you're doing that it's working. Now, you can't always be sure, but you know, Firefox and Chrome are kept pretty up to date. So you should be okay. But they have different policies on what you can and can't do inside the browser. I know Edge is a lot stricter. Either it's strict or they just didn't care to implement some things. So let's look at browser market share. Did you zoom in on those? I forgot about the zoom to make extra detail. Okay, so here we go. Chrome. Currently it is 63%. The next one is Safari, probably because of all the people that have iPhones. And then here's the rest of them. We have Firefox is only, let's turn off the ones that I know aren't going to be that much. So these are the ones, the major ones. So Firefox is only 3.79% and Edge is only 3%. So developing things that work on Chrome is going to be your priority, but there's a large enough chunk of people using Safari that you're going to want to make sure it works there. And then, you know, 3% isn't anything to ignore. So, but obviously your priority would be Chrome. And this is including browsers on all platforms. So if we use desktop, you can see here we have Chrome at 67%. Safari is only at 10%. Okay, so what that tells us is there's a lot less people with a Mac desktop computer. Otherwise, this would be higher probably. I'll specifically look only at mobile, because, you know, most people are going to be browsing on their phone these days. And there we have Chrome at 61%, because that's going to be the browser of choice for most people with Android. And Safari's 25%, which most people with an iPhone are going to use Safari if they don't know any better. All right. So we can also look at mobile market share. This is all really important information if you're going to be creating things. So let's take a look at, here we have Samsung devices and Apple. Huh. I thought that would be hard. I feel like everyone I know has an iPhone. But here, and so let's look at mobile OS. market share. That's what I wanted to look at anyway. So we have Android. I guess Samsung's. What is that? Yeah. We have all these weird ones. Nobody's using any of these. Alright. You either have an Android phone or you have an iOS iPhone. And so here it says Android 71%, iPhone 28%. So, Alex, you bring up a really good point. Because we have it's almost like a religion, honestly. If you start with an iPhone and that's what you know, it's really hard to switch over to Android. If you started with Android, it's really hard to switch over to iPhone. So my partner has iPhone and I have Android. And she always asks me, like if we're driving somewhere, to answer messages or change the GPS. And I feel like a toddler trying to use it because I have no idea. There's no back button. There's no way to... the interface is minimal. So I don't find it intuitive. There's nothing on there that tells you how to use it. Maybe there's a tutorial at the beginning. Anyway, I've gotten better. As you use it more, you'll get better. But it has a big enough market share that you should definitely consider it when you're creating things. All right, Android. An example of someone switching is my dad recently switched from iPhone to Android, and he's liked it a lot more. I think I think the market share for Android is going up just because the user interface is much easier to understand. Everything has a button, and you can use the buttons and not have to rely on gestures, sliding the screen back and forth. So I think that really hurts the iPhone, even though it makes it look a lot prettier. This clearly indicates that function is more important in a mobile device than form. But if you just use your phone to browse the internet, text, I don't know, use apps, it's fine. You can do either one, but if I want to be efficient using my phone, I prefer to use Android. So. Again, if you are developing things, you will have to become familiar with both, so you know what the capabilities are, and you can design the most efficient, interface for that. Okay. So here they're talking about how you can use the developer console, which I showed you guys when I was, I forgot how to reference the elements on a page. So I just looked. You can look at the structure. You have the window object, and what we care about is the document object. And there's a lot of stuff in here you can ignore until you need it, which a lot of people don't realize. This is very intimidating to see all of this stuff. It's one reason technology is it's a steep learning curve without some guidance. Okay, so that whole thing was to explain why I use Chrome. The real reason I use Chrome is I can tie it into my Google account and log into all the stuff. It just logs into everything for me. It saves all my passwords. It's just the most efficient browser for me. So with how much I browse and use tools through the internet, if something saves me 1 second on a repetitive task, it's worth switching for me. So Did you draw that? Oh, cool. Okay, so we looked at variables. Okay, let's change some of this. The book is going to show the code as using var. That still works, but it's better to use, instead of var, to use let. So you declare a variable. You have to include var or let in front of the name. Then you give it a name. And then you can use it from that point on to store values. So here we're storing something called a string value, and a string is just a collection of characters. So this is saying inside of the username variable, inside of that container, put the value of this string, which is uppercase K, lowercase a, r, e, n, and then down here they're using a function of the document object called write to take that string and put it on the web page. So let's see this code in action. Copy. And we'll just throw it right on the page here. So we'll just throw it down here. So we'll create a variable called username. Here we're assigning the value of Karen into the username. And document.write creates an element on the web page and puts in whatever value you have here. Right. I may have to create a separate script tag for this. Let's see. Or let's go ahead and just put it in our script tag at the end, or our script.js file. One nice thing about using the script.js file is it'll include proper JavaScript color coding, and it'll format it. It knows to format it using the JavaScript format, the standard. Okay, so you can see, the word let here is in blue because it's a keyword in JavaScript, which means this is telling JavaScript to do something very specific, which is to declare a variable, create a box to hold a value. This is red because it's a string value. There's two major data types that you should be aware of. There's many more, but we'll create another variable called number, and we can store an integer value in there, which is represented by green. So this is the value of 2. All right. And some people get confused about data types because we can create another one. Let's call this number 1. And we'll create one called number 2. And if we do this, this looks like we're creating a variable called number 1 and we're putting 2 in it. We're assigning the value of 2 into that. And then here we're creating a variable called number 2 and we're assigning the value of 2 into that. But these variables have completely different data types. This is the value of 2. This here is the character 2. You can boil everything in a computer down to numbers, and then from there down into binary, which represents a number. The binary representation of the value 2 and the binary representation of the character 2 are like very different. can't think of a non-cliche analogy to use here. So these have, well, basically you can think about this. These have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Okay, this may as well be an orange, and this may as well be a song. It's that different to the computer. Okay. See if it worked. All right, there's my Karen. So we're just adding stuff to the page. And it's hard to see on that one. Let's get a different random color. There it is, Karen. And we could do a couple more to print out those other variables. Number 1 and number 2. And so when you print out the value 2 and you print out the character 2, JavaScript is just going to assume if you put the value of 2 that you want the character 2 to appear on the page. And this is literally the character 2. So, and it's funny, it's actually described, doing this in the code is actually described as a literal. This is an integer literal. It literally represents the value of 2. This is a string literal. It literally represents the character 2. Okay? And so this right here will always be the value 2. This will always be the character 2. But variables can be variable. That's why they're called variables. And what variable means is it can change. It's important to understand what words mean when you're doing this stuff, so you can figure it out. All right, I like this description. Liable to change, able to be changed or adapted. This is more of an accurate description of a variable in programming. Okay. Let's get rid of some of these tabs here because I'm drowning in tabs. There, it's a little more manageable. All right. So some differences between integers and characters or strings. This is a string made up of the character 2. Let's go ahead and store. You can change the values in variables. So we can do number 1 will assign the value of number 1 plus 3. So when it gets down to this line, what it's going to do is assign a value, overwrite the value in number 1 with the result of this expression. And so number 1 is a variable with a value inside. What value will that be at this point in the code? Well, we set it to 2 here, so that means it's 2. This will be 5. Okay. And now when we print it out, it'll print out 5 on the page. And you can also use this. Well, this isn't going to work. Let's do this. To get things to go on separate lines, this is going to be put into an HTML document. So this is important to understand to be able to manipulate it. So you'll notice it's printing out the 5, but it's just putting all this stuff together on one line. It is separate, but we're just outputting it all on the same line, even though here we're doing it three times, 3 writes. It's just saying, okay, write this, and then after that put a 5, after that put a 2. If we put these in paragraph tags, then we won't have it all on the same line. So you can literally put in HTML here. So now it'll put Karen on a different line. And then it's putting the 5 and the 2 on the same line. So if we want those to be different, or I'm sorry, if we want those on separate lines, we'll have to manually add the paragraph tags. And so here, okay, so here we're using an operator. And if you've ever heard of math, you probably know what this operator is. It's called the addition operator. And it takes the value on one side and the value on the other side, and it combines them together. So we have 2 plus 3, that's 5. It stores 5 in here. And it's the numeric value of 5. It's an integer of 5. All right. Here we can use the addition sign to also include strings. Okay. So we can make as complicated an expression as we want. Okay. So we want a paragraph, the characters for a paragraph before the number, and then we want the character for a closing tag after. And so when you use a plus sign like this, JavaScript will know how you mean to use it using the context of what's around it. And in programming, it's extremely important to understand the order of operations. Okay? Which again is from math. But I won't blame you if you've taken math classes and you either don't remember or didn't learn the order of operations. Have you ever seen those puzzles that look like this? See if I can find one. Problem. Can you guess which answer? There we go. Let's take this. 6 divided by 2. And then when you do this, you're saying multiply that. And then here we have 1 plus 2. So what we want to see, I can just build one here, I guess. We do. And /. Yeah, a lot of people, hopefully a lot of people understand PEMDAS. Now here's the thing. A lot of people in math classes were taught math under such high pressure and at such a speed, with grades being held over their head and worrying that if they didn't do it right, their life was going to be ruined, that people have developed a fear of math. And that follows you through the rest of your life, and you constantly repeat to yourself, oh, I'm not good at math. Everybody's capable of doing math. It's just harder if you have affirmed in your mind constantly that you're not good at math, and it triggers your fear of the anxiety that you had in math, and it makes it really hard for you to do math because every time you think about it, you get anxiety. So stop it. No, but just get some therapy. Okay. So / is how you divide in programming. So I'm going to use that because I don't know where the divide symbol is, and that won't work anyway. So we'll have 6 divided by 2 plus 5 times 4. All right, so the wrong way to do this is from left to right. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. Also, you're probably triggered by if I say show your work, right? I have the right answer. Why do I need to show my work? Well, some people can hold the numbers in their head and skip steps. Some people can't. Okay, so the first step, if we're doing this from left to right, so I'm going to show you the wrong way to do this, and we'll look at the right way to do this. And if you don't understand why these are different, you really need to do some remedial math. Look up a math tutorial basic math tutorial online. There's no shame in it. The only shameful thing is if you don't correct your math abilities, because it's going to hurt you a lot in life. No pressure. So if we're going left to right, it says, okay, 3 plus 5, that's 8. We'll move down the 4. And then 8 times 4 is 32. Okay, so that gives us 32. And so this is wrong. So let's do it the right way. Alright, so like Alex said, PEMDAS, useful acronym, tells you the basic order of arithmetic. So at a bare minimum, you should have a firm grasp on arithmetic to be a functioning person. Okay. So if you're missing this, again, I don't blame you, because some places don't have a very good ability to provide education. I've been to a few of those. Somehow I missed how to divide decimals, so I have no idea how to do that. Luckily, I don't need to know how to do that by hand, because all those people that said you'd never have a calculator in your pocket at all times were wrong. So anyone that ever uses absolutes, be wary of what they say. Alright, so we got to change these steps, and we're going to follow this order of operations acronym, which stands for parentheses, exponents, and we're not going to be using exponents. So the E, we're not really worried about that right now. Whoops, math. The M is math, right? Multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So when you start mixing these together, you have to follow this order. All right. So remember this term, PEMDAS. Okay. And in for now, we're not going to worry about the other operators, because there's 1.5 million different operators in programming, and so here we're only worried about these 6 levels of priority. In programming, you're going to have to learn a lot more. So here, let's follow it. The first thing we have to do is look for parentheses. There are none. So for exponents, there are none. Let's do multiplication next. Okay, so we'll bring this down. 5 times 4 is 20. All right, we have one step done. Next, we're done with multiplication. There's none of this stuff. Division, there's one part with division. So that gives us 3. We bring down the rest of the expression. And we have, whoops, I guess we can just put it here. Now we only have addition, so we don't even have to think about the order because there's only one thing left. 23. Correct. Okay. How can we change this to get 32? Well, we can control the order of operations with parentheses. All right. So if we want this to be 3, we need to do the division first. That's actually going to happen first anyway. And then they're going to add the result of this to the 5. That's what we did here. So if we want that to happen first, we have to put it in parentheses. Okay? And that actually fixes it. All right? So follow through, these parentheses would be here. So we're still solving everything in there. That makes it 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. Times 4, 32. There we go. And the reason I showed you this with the parentheses is you're going to use a lot of parentheses and expressions. Now for this class you're not, and if you're moving on to non-programming stuff and non-technology stuff, because there's a lot of different majors in here, at least learn the order of operations for arithmetic. Okay? So, tattoo this on your wrist or something. All right. If you don't know this, you're math illiterate. If you're illiterate in any kind of basic skills, it's a huge detriment to you in your life. So I'm telling you now, here's how you fix it. Okay. Preaching to the choir, right, Alex? And if you find yourself having anxiety when you even think about doing math, it's a real issue. So you need to deal with it. All right. Just like test anxiety. If you can't focus while you're taking a test because you're just so worried, there are ways you can deal with that. Okay. Let's look at this prompt method. So now, instead of putting Karen as our username, let's have the user provide the username. So when the page loads, we're going to ask them for their username, and whatever they type in, we're going to put on the page. To do that, we just have to use the prompt function. What this does is that opens a little pop-up with a text box where you can enter in a value. Okay, so here you can specify username. All right. And so whatever they type in is going to get stored in username and printed to the screen because we're printing that down here. All right. Username. Whatever we put in, it's going to be printed out to the screen here. All right. Easy enough. All right. Let's do in our color change. Let's choose our color. Let's have the user choose their color instead of using a random one for background of the body. So that is this one. I'll label this so if you look at it later, you remember. Change the body background color. Okay. And we can just put some of these to show that this is different from that. And I don't want you to lose this. If you want to use this, I'll comment it out. If you want to use it again, you just have to delete those slashes, or actually in Replit you can just hit Control// on a line and it will add them or remove them for you. You can do it to the whole page. You can do it to multiple lines, however you want to use it. Okay. So we're going to turn this one off. We're going to make a new one down here. We're going to say let color choice. Remember, we're declaring a variable, and then we want to ask the user to give us a color. So how do we do that? And we want to store that color in a variable so we can use it down here. So we're going to set whatever they choose to the background color. Alright, so we can say prompt choose or enter your color of choice. Okay, and whatever they type in, we want to assign that value into our variable. And then we can use that variable. Now let's see if it'll use the color names. It should. So if we red, and my username is Bob, changes it to red, and there's my username. Alright. We can try one more time just so you can see blue. So you can see with JavaScript we're adding interactivity to the page. We can use events to make things happen, and there's no limit on what you can do with JavaScript on the page. You can manipulate everything in every way. You just have to look up the functions for it or create your own. And at the base level, you're just manipulating the numbers that represent everything on the screen. So I want blue, and my username is whatever. So I can change it to whatever color I want. You could even put in some hexadecimal. So FF0034. And blank username. Okay. So there's that. I think. I guess since we're using the assignment operator in here, I will tell you, in programming, the assignment operator has a very low priority, which means it's going to happen basically after everything on the right. Whatever expressions you have on the right, those are going to evaluate before this assignment. Okay? So that's why down here, when we're adding these together, it doesn't store it into number one until all of this is done. And so what this would look like when it's done is this. Okay, what if I don't put these parentheses in here? Let's see what happens then. White. All right. So now it says 23. So the order of operations here is messing it up. So if you have multiple operators of the same priority working, they go from left to right. So here we're saying take these 3 characters and add it to 2. Remember up here we specified that as 2. So that's going to take the 2 and just tack it on here. So it'll be, well, we can actually look at what it's going to do. So I can show the work of what the computer is going to build. So step 1, it's going to create this, and then we will have plus 3 plus, I'll get rid of this. Well, I'll leave that. Actually, do this, because I want you to be able to see both as an example. Okay, there's that one, and we'll just copy it down here. So this one doesn't have the parentheses, so we'll see how that works. This one does. Okay. Alright, so the first step, whoops, this one doesn't have it. That's right. This one does. There we go. Okay, so since these are all on the same priority, it's going to do this one first. It's going to take that 2 and tack it on here. It's going to result in this. And we'll just bring the other steps down. What do you think the next step is going to be? It's just going to tack that 3 on to the end here. Okay. Watch out in Replit. It's trying to help you when it puts 2 double quotes like this. But you got to pay attention because that can really mess things up. And then the final step turns it into this. Okay. That is the final step of this expression, but then after this is the assignment. So number 1, assign the value of this. Is the real last step. It's putting this value in the variable. Okay. So see if you can figure this one out before me, how it prints out 23 on this one and 5 on this one. We have in parentheses this. I think this will be faster if I do it this way. Okay. So remember our order of operations. PEMDIS. P for parentheses. So we need to find the parentheses. Here's some. So whatever's in those is going to evaluate first. That's going to give us 5. Okay. And now that these are on the same priority, it's just going to go from left to right. So it's going to stick the 5 here. It's going to stick the, whoops, why is there a B there? That wasn't the space bar. There, and then now that that value is done evaluating, that expression is at its finished product, it will assign that into number 1. And since the code is read procedurally, now that we're doing both of these, once you make a guess at what's actually going to print out on the screen, is it going to be 23? Is it going to be 5? The suspense is killing us, I know. Okay. Let's set the background to white, username blah blah blah. We have the username, and then 23, and then 2. But we're only printing out 3 things. Are we doing this in another thing? It's confusing me. Nope, it's not in there. Is it in here? No. Okay, that's confusing. I wonder if it didn't refresh. So it's going with 23, which is confusing me because we're overwriting that here with our 5. And so I don't know why it's doing this, because it should, and so I'll explain why I'm confused, and then I'll show you a tool that'll show you how to see what's actually happening. Okay, so we're setting, oh, did I call it number 2? Did I? Okay, so oh. No, that shouldn't make a difference. Oh, it will. Okay. So it's actually taking the result of this and putting it in for this. Okay, so I have to set it back to 2 or 4 if I want these to start with the same values. Okay. And just so we can see this close together. So there's our 5. So the code is ran procedurally. Here we're assigning 2 to number 1, and then here we're sticking all this stuff together, and we can see how that gets built. And so it's putting a paragraph with the characters 2 and 3 into number 1, right on this line. Then we're overwriting that with the 2 anyway, and then this evaluates to paragraph tags with a 5. And so number 1, by the time we print it out, is going to be this. All right, and so just so you can see, I'm going to take this, and this. Copy that. And there's a useful tool, and I'll post it in here, called they're just calling it visualize, I guess, but you can select what language you want to visualize, and this actually gives you a peek into the computer's memory as it's running, one line at a time. So I'll copy that code into here because that's what I want to see. All right, and then you can't use document.write unless you're on a web page, and this code is running independently of a web page, so I can print out here. I can print it out to the console, so there is a console object within the window, and it has a function of log that'll just print out whatever value you have. So we'll use these variables. Okay. And so we can see this. Alright, so what we're looking at here is the code on the left. The only thing different between this and Replit is this little arrow shows us where the computer is looking. Okay, so when we start to run this code, it's looking at this line. On the right, it shows us what the computer knows. So at the beginning, the computer knows nothing. Right? So if we hit next, it'll put a little green arrow here that shows that this line has ran and the computer is ready to look at the next line. And over here now in its memory, it says there's a variable called number1 and the value is undefined because we haven't set the initial value yet. Okay, and we're going to create another variable called number2. So now we have two variables in the memory, both with a value of undefined. Here we're assigning the character of 2 into number 2, and so that'll change over here. So in the computer's memory, now it knows number 2 has a value of the character 2, and then we're putting the integer value of 2 in number 1. So now we can see in the computer it has these two variables with these two values. Okay, this line's doing a lot, but we know it results in this. So we'll see. Whoops, I forgot to update that. So this is just a comment, so you can ignore that. I should have taken that out. But we know this evaluates to this. So now number 1 has this string in it, the string value of these characters. Okay, and now we're setting number 1 back to 2. So it's going to overwrite that back to 2. And it's going to set it to the result of this expression, where we're adding the numbers before we're adding in the strings. So now that has the 5. And so let's print out the value of number 1. So this is what would be output in the console. And then we're going to print out the value of number 2, which is the character 2, so that gets output. So this is cool because you can actually see every step what's happening in the computer and why you're getting the output that you're getting. So let's make that problem I had before and see what was happening. So if I don't change the value of number 1 here, we can see okay, we know all this, we're getting the initial values. Okay, so the first one, it's going to put the value of number 1, which is 2, in with this and put that in there. So that's going to make it this 23 instead of a paragraph tag. Now here, it's going to take, when it gets to this point, where number 1 is, it's just going to tack a 3 on the end of here, and then put more paragraph tags around it. So this is what we were getting. And that's why it didn't put 5 in there. And so here, if I really couldn't figure out what was happening, which was just experience of reading code, I was able to notice that error. If you're beginning with this stuff, you may not understand what's going on. You can use a tool like this, put your code in, and see, well, that's not what I wanted, right? This is just a kind of a gobbledygook mess. Alright, so there's some help on that. Alright, I think I'm not going to talk about if-else statements in this class, functions. You learn all that in logic. I think the last thing I'm going to do is show you, don't worry about jQuery, I'm just going to show you how to, because we looked at forms, we can use JavaScript and the data entered into forms to change things. So I'm actually going to create another page for this in the same project. This will be the last thing we do here. And I'll just create a link to my new page. I'll call it forms.html. Forms. Okay, this is from chapter 2, how do you create a hyperlink? And it's going to be really annoying if these prompts keep happening. So for now, I'm just going to take off the script tag. Okay, that's putting in the script.js right here. So if I don't want this to happen anymore, I can just click in the line and hit Control//. I'll comment that out. If I ever want to turn it back on, I can select the line like this and hit the same thing, Control//. So now it will not do that stuff, and I can access this link. Okay, it says that doesn't exist, so we have to create it. Forms.html, and then in this file, we'll just put a couple of form elements. So a text box, and let's put some radio buttons. Okay, and so we want a way to organize our radio buttons on different lines, so we'll just put each one in a paragraph. Okay. Or actually, we'll just use a div. So I can create one and if you're tired of typing this stuff out, remember you could do this, div, enter. And then in there I want to put a radio button, so I can do input, enter. And then I just have to change it to radio. But if I already have one, I can just once you have one and you're using the same thing, you can just copy it. Okay, and then the last one is we'll just stick a submit button at the end. Type equals submit. Since I code in so many different places, it's hard. I haven't gotten used to the autocomplete on Replit. So if we go to forms now, we have a nice little form here. Okay. And I think let's not make this a submit because I don't want to refresh the page. We'll just make it a button. And in HTML5, you should really use the button element, which I believe has an open and closing tag, but I can't remember, so I'm just going to type button, and it is. Okay. And we'll do change. So now if we go to forms, type in a color here, and we want to put some values for these, so we'll do red, blue, green, yellow, orange, and chartreuse. All of the primary colors of the rainbow. All right. Now, our radio buttons are not working, right? Because we only want to be able to select one color for the divs. Okay. And let's put this in a paragraph tag. Yeah. Trying to find shortcuts. Paragraph, I'll just throw this in there, because I want everything on its own line. Alright. So how do we fix these radio buttons? Do you remember how to group them from chapter 9? Nice. Spoiler alert. Oh no. But I guess you're part of the audience, so. Good. The disembodied voice was right. We have to give them the same name. So I'm just going to call these color because that's what we're determining by selecting them. Alright. Forms. So now they're the fancy way to say it, they are mutually exclusively selectable, which means you can only select one. They're mutually exclusive, so you can only have one. Okay. Fancy way of saying you can only have one. I'm getting tired of having to click that link, so let's do JavaScript Redirect. Alright, so I'm just going to have this code run, and it will send us immediately to the forms page. So I'm tired of clicking that link. So in a script tag, just throw this in here. I want to go to forms.html. I'll comment. If I remember, I'll comment that out at the end. Okay. I think we do have to use replace. Oh, we are using replace. Okay, let's try. It might not work in this frame, so let's try it in a new window. Okay, didn't work. Let's see what it says, because you can check errors in here. Okay, so there's the code. This is making it so much faster, right? It's working there. We may have to give it the absolute link. So if we go to forms, .html, here's our absolute link. Where do they have theirs? Is it at the end of their code? Yeah, I wonder if we have to put it down there. Let me get rid of some of this. Oops. Okay. See if this one works too. Let's see if theirs works. We might be getting blocked by either Replit or the browser. It's going to it in here. Okay, let's try putting it at the end of the body. Location matters. Not sure if code inside of a script tag that tells you what the script is works anyway. There we go. So now when you run it, it'll bring us directly there. Okay. Which now I also realize if we're here and we refresh it, it's still going to stay there. So we didn't need to do that. But I wanted it to load in here. Okay. So now using JavaScript to actually do this stuff. So we're going to need on this page our color change file so we can have these functions. So we need to include those functions by using a script tag. Color change.js. And don't forget your closing script tag. Okay. Oh, don't forget your closing script tag. Yeah, because it's interpreting the whole page as JavaScript now. There we go. All right. So because these radio buttons represent, this is just a label over here. If we want to get an actual value, we have to attach a value to these as an attribute. Here's the exciting part, right? Fast forward at this point. If you're watching the recording. Alex is the only audience member here. So he has the benefit of asking questions over other people. Live, anyway. You can always email me. Okay. So now we have those values in there. I don't think I even needed this. Okay. Well, I guess I'll have to add a new function. So now we have this text box. Let's give it a name. We'll call it body box. All right. And we have these radio buttons. Let's see if that'll is happy with itself. Okay. And so we want it, so if we put red here, we want it to change the background color to red. And then down here, whatever color we select, we want to change the background color of a box I haven't added yet. So let's put that at the bottom. And we'll give it an ID of box. And we'll use some CSS to actually make it a box. And we'll use embedded just to keep it all on the same page. So remember, selecting an ID. We want to set a border just so we can see it of 2px black. Whoops. Solid block. There we go. It's a very boring border, but that's not what we're worried about. And we'll set the width to 200 pixels and the height to 200 pixels to make a box. So there's our box. Okay. So let's work on the body color first. So we need code that will run when we click this button. That's going to be an event. Clicking on something is an event. So we want to use the onClick event for when we click this button. So we attach it to this element. And we will make a function called, well, we could just write the code right in here. We want to do document dot body dot style dot background color. Oops, background is one word. Equals we need the value of this text box. Okay, so how do we get the value out of there? Well, we reference this text box similarly as we would access anything else. So document dot body, and I want to know how can I access the value here. So, you know, again, off the top of my head, I can't remember how to access that. So we'll go into the developer tools, look at the file. We need to look at which variables there are in there. Whoops. So to get those, we have to stop the code after it's run. So let's stop here. Refresh the page to run it again. And stop it here, where the actual code is. Nope, that's not going to stop it in the right place. So let's go inside of color change and just stop it here. That should give us what we want. Maybe here. All right. Why it's not stopping. It's a lot easier, or it's more difficult to work with the code if it's inside of the HTML. So I'll just fix that. So this is kind of a mess here. So you can actually just include a function name and then create the function in the JavaScript file. So what do we want to call it? Let's call it activate. So we'll create some code that will run whenever we call the function activate. So we have two functions in here already. Okay. So let's create a new one, and you can just follow the same pattern as the other ones. So activate. Might run into an issue here. Right, so we want to take the value from, or we're going to assign into the background color the value that we retrieve from, we'll just put this here for now, because I don't remember how to select that specific thing if we're using the name attribute, but there should be a way. We just have to look. So let's stop the code, because we're calling activate. Oh, that's why, because we aren't clicking the button. There we go. My bad. Here's our, over here in scope, here's what it can see. So inside the window, we have document, and within the document we have a, see, here's the problem. It only sees the HTML element at this point, so we can't actually access, or can we? No. Inside of this, is there more? Head and body. And then within the body, we have our text box, which has a maybe it's in somewhere in here. It should have its name that we assigned. We did do that, right? Oh. Yeah, name body box. So let's just see if we can search in here. See if we can find it in here, because you can look in here for specific variables. So let's just put in body box and see if we can find that. Should exist. Oh, that's not what we want. We want global. Sorry. Global document. There we go. And there should be a way to access it by name. Oops. Let's look at DOM, selecting element by name attribute. Here we go. There's a little shortcut here. A function that'll get the element by name. So just to keep things consistent, let's actually call it, let's give it an ID. And so in our function, that is going to happen when we click the button. We're going to take the value of document.get element by ID. Then you pass in the ID you want to find, which was body box. Okay. That will give you the actual object that represents the element. That's not what we want. We want the value that represents the value typed into the box. Alright, so now if we type red, if we type blue, or chartreuse. Okay, so that's working. Now let's do the same thing for the radio buttons. So when we click activate, we're going to grab that value to change that, and now we want to change the color of this box. So what we're going to change needs to be on the left. So we no longer want to change the body. We want to change get element by ID. And what was the ID that we gave to that box? It was box. Lots easy to remember. Okay. And the color we're going to grab is no longer the value, or it's not going to be from the text box. It needs to be the value of whichever radio button is selected. So I think we can do, so we can shortcut this. There we go. We want that. Not capital D. Because ID is not an acronym. So that means only the first letter needs to be capitalized. Okay. Or whoever made this function decided that. And now we have to live with it. Okay. Let's try this, but I'm not sure if this will work. So what did we call those? We gave these radio buttons the name of color. Let's see if it lets us shortcut this. Okay. So I don't think it worked. And so we can try it though. See if it gives us an error. It doesn't. Oh, no, I'm grabbing the value. Okay. So we can see if we move one more step. Okay, and then we move one more step. Now we have the error. It says in the console. Oh, document.get element by name is not a function. I thought I saw that. Oh, elements by name. Okay. So I don't think that'll work either because that's going to return a structure of a list of it, all the elements. But I get lucky. Nope. Okay. So what we have to do is check the syntax for selecting, getting the value out of a selection of radio buttons. So JavaScript radio buttons value. Get the value of the value attribute of a radio button. So here it looks like they're just doing it the hard-coded way. They're cheating here. This is not how you use a radio button. That's if you only, when do you have one radio button? Here we go. Stack Overflow will know. So remember, first thing here, that's the problem. All right, here's the answer. All right. Gotta use a for loop. That's fine. And an if statement. So we had one step correct. Do-do-do. So before we're able to do that, we're going to have to use this. Oh, I thought I copied that other part. Well, we need this. And we don't need this anymore. We got to put the correct thing in there after we get the correct thing. Okay, so I'm also going to start the first one as selected because we don't want them to be able to hit the button. Maybe it's selected equals true. Nope. All right. Oh. It's not this, is it? Nope. Okay, good. Value, disabled, size, max length, required, step. All right. Narrow our search. So it's checked for checkboxes. Is it checked for select a checkbox? It's just checked. Okay. So because we want the first one to be checked, to be selected in the beginning. See if that works. Okay, it's checked. Even though it's a radio button, it's checked. Okay. So back to fixing the code. Alright, so well, now I lost my thing, so we got to build that again, document. Well, we're going to need a variable to hold it anyway, so let radio value equal document dot get elements by name and the name was color. Okay, so that is our, this will use, sorry, here we want this to actually be radios, because that's down here. They're going to loop through all of those. Whichever one is checked, we're going to grab that value and store that in our that radio value. So we'll declare the variable there. We'll assign the value here. So what this does is it makes a list of all of the radio buttons, the objects that represent those buttons. And then this is code that tells it to go through one at a time and see, is that radio button checked? So it's going to look at this one. Is it checked? If it is, it'll take the value we put in there, which was red, and then this break will say, okay, you're done if you find it. Let's say we selected chartreuse, then it'll go through red. That's not selected, so it'll go to blue, then to green, then to yellow, then to orange, and then at chartreuse, then it will take that color. Okay. And then we can put the radio value in as the color. Easy, right? Right. Apparently not easy. Did I actually run this? Nope. Okay. So now we need to see if I made any errors. Don't see any errors. So let's see what the value is of radio. If I have red selected and I hit change, we can look at is there an easy way to get rid of these? Delete all. We want to look at the value of radios. Well, that's not good. Oh, that's because we're stopping up here. I'm going to skip down to where we're assigning the value to radios. Okay, so here is all of our radios, and they have a value. Oh, here we go. Attributes. Value. So I might have to select attributes first. It didn't create, or did it? Oh, there's more. Okay. There it is. Value. Red. Gotta scroll all the way down to find that one. Okay, so it's taking red and it should be putting that into our radio value. So when we get down to that line, let's see what it sets it to. So it sets it to red there, and then it goes down and should find the box element. And then, oh, I forgot style. All right. My bad. There we go. Red, blue, green, yellow. Now it's kind of annoying to select it and then hit change. Because we're already clicking on a button here, why do I have to click on another button? So we can actually change it instead of well, I guess we could just add it in here. On our page where our radio buttons are, we can just include this same on-click attribute inside of each radio button. And then that'll make it so it'll do it whenever you click. Alright, and you could play around with different things. Let's take a look. You know, in the style are all the different properties you can change. So let's take a look at just an element, and let's find the style inside of the first radio button. So we got to go down all the way to S. Style. Okay, so we have all the properties here. You could change the size. So we go down each eye. There's height. So we could change that to 50 pixels. You could change the border. You can change all kinds of properties. Okay. You could do it the same way. You could just go inside of the function and say, you know, let's do box size. Set the value here. 10 pixels. Pixels, and we'll just do that. Well, you know, to save some time, I can just do this. Here's the value. Here's this. So I'm holding Control and I'm double clicking here. I can put in the pixels. And then I can just put in the numbers, so let's do 25, and we can do 50, 100, 200, 500. Whoops, not 5,000. It'd be too big. You decide what you want to make yours. You have total control. Alright, so we can select these. We do need to change the name though, otherwise it will use both. So let's go to the names and we'll just select all of those using Control double click on each one. We'll call this one size. So that way we can select a color and we can select a size. And then in our activate function, we can come down here. And we'll just copy this down, and we can use it for size. And so size isn't a style attribute. Height and width are. So I'll do height. Oops, that's not the one I want to change. We're going to have two of these. And since we're copying this so much, we can make this a lot simpler. So we can have let box equal document that got element by ID box. Okay. And then we can replace all of these with, so I can go to, or I can select it like this, and then I can hit Control F2. That will select every instance of it, and I can change it to box. And then I only need to do that once up here, and then I can refer to it as box the rest of the time. Okay. Height, width, and I don't think we need to change anything else actually, except this part for getting the values. We're not looking for the value in the color group, we are looking for the size group. And since we're copying this same code right here, so we're going to be doing the same thing here as we're doing down here. It's just the difference is going to be one of them we are changing size, one of them we're changing color. So we can actually just separate this into another function so that way we won't have to repeat ourselves. And we'll call this change box. And we need to know what we want to change, so we'll give it a parameter. And we'll copy this in. This stuff is all going to be the same. So we're going to find, well, we don't need this. We don't need to change the background color of that every time. So we'll get the box. It'll grab the radio buttons of the group size, or whatever property we pass in. And then down here, change that. This one changes the background color. I guess we would need two functions for that. I guess we could do an if statement here. So if property equals, so the comparison operator in, oh, you're getting in some way more complicated. Is that you, Daniel? Who is that? Can't see your picture. Oops. Wait, that's not Zach, is it? Zach, are you invading my class? That's fine. Where are you? don't think I can see. So I think that might be. Oh well. Well, whoever it is, thank you for joining. For context of what's going on, we are looking at this is a class about learning HTML and CSS, and this is just the last chapter where I'm kind of introducing JavaScript. The students won't be expected to do nearly what we're doing here, but what I'm doing here is even out of scope, but arrow functions. I put the link in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, and it'll bring you right to this code that I'm writing. If you want to put in the code to use an arrow function, I can take a look at that, or you can just put it in the chat, because I'm curious about that. I just don't want to have to look up the syntax right now. All right, so property is size. Whoops, no, property is color. Then change the color. We can use else here. Is it? Yeah. This way we can add more properties later if we want. Oh, are you someone I don't know? So for this one, we'll have to change two properties, height and width. See if it works. I might have forgot something. Oh, here's what we forgot. I need to do, now that we have that, we can call the function. First setting the box in there. Guess we could. We'll just set it every time. So now, can I include the set? Yeah. Now we don't need any of this. Can actually do it in two function calls. Change box. Size. And change box color. Let's see if it works. Right, so if you want to save lines, you can do this. I usually just have my students include it because in the beginning, if they decide to go back and add multiple lines, that way they don't forget to add it. And I think that's fine just for this intro course. Later on, when we're talking about code hygiene, we'll go more into that. So I've changed it to blue, and it'll go to whatever size is here. So that works. And so you could create this for any property you want. let's see. Yeah, so now if we wanted to create one for like box shadow, it's much easier to add that in, because we could just do this right here. And so now it's easier to scale up how many properties you want to include on the page. Maybe we'll limit the options for box shadow. We'll just go, we'll call it normal. Big and crazy. So if you remember the values for box shadow, it is the position, vertical, horizontal position, the blur radius, and color. So a normal one would look something like this. 5, 5, 5, and let's say gray. For a big one, we'll go 15, 15. Let's try 10 on that. And then for crazy, we'll go negative, negative, and chartreuse. Alright, I think that's it. So if I want a normal box shadow, let's make sure. I think I forgot to finish adding the properties in here. Yeah. It needs to know what property to change. Okay, it's not working. So let's troubleshoot it. Okay. Where are we stuck at? I'm stuck here. Okay, we want to watch. We also want to watch for the value of this. So radio value is not getting put in here. Did I rename the group? That's probably what I forgot to do. Yep, okay. So you see how it's difficult to remember to change all of this stuff. There's always a way to simplify things into functions and even things like your own objects with classes. Okay, I think I got everything. So the normal shadow, well, let's make the box bigger so we can see it. Still not working, so let's go back to troubleshoot. Click on it, run it through, check those values. Radio value 10px at this point. Let me double check that. What is in box? No. Okay, inside a box. Let's check what style we have. I might have just called it the wrong thing. No, it's the right thing. Property equals box shadow. So, oh, I forgot to actually call it. Forgot to call the function. I think I need to stop and have some lunch. There we go. Let's make it green. 50 pixels. It has a normal shadow. Let's give it a big shadow. I guess it's not actually any bigger, but it's farther away. And then the crazy shadow. Since we use negative numbers, it goes to the top. Let's put our box out a little bit further. And we know how to do that because we have knowledge of HTML and CSS. So here where our box is, I'm going to add some space above and below. Let's just use the cheat way. Oops, that's not the right one. That's this one down here. So we'll just move it down. That gives it, using colors other than gray for your shadow kind of looks weird. So anyway, this illustrates, the basic stuff that you can do with JavaScript affecting a web page. I showed you how to include the different ways to include the JavaScript on the page, events, some basic functions for taking in user input, easily by using prompt, and let's quickly take a look at the exercises. So I have assigned 1, 3, and 4. So in 1, you are using an event for when you click to do an alert. And I've demonstrated everything you need for these. Yeah, all 3 of these, just use those events we talked about. In 3, you are doing the exact same thing again, except this time it wants to pop up as soon as the page loads. And then 4, prompt the user for name and age, and then write a message on the page. Use the prompt method and variables. Okay. So I demonstrated all that stuff with, a mountain of other junk to show you what we'll be doing. For those of you moving on to Web Scripting 1, this is the basics of what we'll do in the beginning, and then we'll get more complicated from there. I will turn back on, well, I'll get rid of this redirect. Okay. So, and then you can look at the code. Everything's working. All right. This is the final lecture, and we're all done. So, thank you for watching this, and I will hopefully see you next semester. If you need any help, I am still available this week. Just check my schedule to sign up for a time, or you can email me if you just want to have a quick question about something. Next week is finals week, so I won't be able to meet unless it's an emergency, because I'll be doing a ton of grading, and you guys will have the final to work on. So on that one, I will only be able to answer questions that to clarify the question, because that is where you demonstrate that you actually learn things. So, all right, have a good day, and I'll see you later.